Welcome to the Understand Your Cycle podcast, where we turn taboo topics into table topics. My name is Kapu, and today I'm joined by Rina, a feminist entrepreneur, CFO, soon to finish her doctorate in business administration and doing many other things. Hi, Rina.
Hi, Kathy. Thanks for having
How are
me.
you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Great. So today we're speaking to Rina about menopause and perimenopause. But before we start, could you please tell us a period-related story that you may or may not have told anyone else?
Well, there's one thing that comes to mind. When I was quite young, I guess I was 14, there was one of my friends, a guy who's a little bit older than me, I guess 15 or so. He we were just chatting about something, and then he just suddenly said to me, "Oh, I hope you're not on your period because I don't want to have to clean up the mess." And I just thought, what's that about, and where did that come from, and what's he talking about, and then I realized that it was always just to kind of put me down, and somehow like to kind of explain to me that he thought he knew what periods were about, and to try and sort of make me feel bad about it, which I completely ignored, obviously. But yeah, something I hadn't thought about for a long time, but it just brought home um how sort of how the view of other people was, that it was kind of shameful and that I should be ashamed.
How did you feel at the time? Because you were quite young.
I remember thinking it was odd. I thought it was an odd comment, but it didn't really faze me that much. But I don't think, at least I can't. But I do remember it. So I
Yeah,
guess,
so it clearly left some kind of mark. Oh,
yeah.
that sucks. That's a terrible comment to have. But good that it didn't phase you much.
I don't think it did anyway. So I can't. I just remember thinking, "Oh God, what an idiot!" After I thought about it, ugh, you know. Anyway,
Were you on your period at the time? Or wait, did you
no.
have your periods or not yet?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
Okay.
But no, that's what I'm saying. It was kind of completely out of the blue. I think I just, I was like, I didn't
Yeah.
even realize what he was talking about for a while. Just didn't get it. And then, yeah. Anyway, stupid. But I felt it, which is how I'm remembering it now, that it was sort of to try and make me feel ashamed. That's how I
Mm,
felt. But I obviously wasn't and didn't feel ashamed. But I think that was
good.
the idea.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe someone else might have felt ashamed and might have received that comment in a really different way. So I'm glad that you didn't. Okay, well, thank you for that. Um, Before we delve deep into perimenopause and menopause, which I'm very excited for, I just want to make sure that we get the wordings right and give a brief introduction to both perimenopause and menopause. So, firstly, on the wordings, because even though half the population experiences perimenopause and menopause, we still get them confused. So, menopause is the point of time 12 consecutive months after a person's last period. The average age of menopause is 51. And when this point has passed, a person is officially called postmenopausal. Perimenopause, meanwhile, is the time when a person's body is making the transition to menopause, often accompanied by physical and emotional symptoms. It usually begins in a woman's 40s and lasts a number of years, often well beyond the point of menopause. Symptoms include hot flushes, brain fog, sleep problems, insomnia, heart palpitations, anxiety, low energy, low mood, memory loss, difficulty concentrating, joint aches, headaches, vaginal dryness, and low libido. I felt they all had to be said, even though that is a long list. 90% of women experience symptoms of perimenopause, and 25% describe these as severe and debilitating in the UK. So I'm very excited to hear a bit more about your experience of menopause, because it's something a bit like periods that's very taboo, that we don't speak much about, and people in their 20s and 30s really don't know very much about menopause. So my first question for you is, how would you describe how perimenopause feels to someone who doesn't have it or doesn't know anything about it?
So one thing I do know is that everyone's different. So I can only speak about my experiences
Mm-hmm.
as they affected me. Um, I think the first thing that I really noticed was the hot sweats at night. So because I'm a very good sleeper, I don't really wake up much at night. I never have in my life. So I would wake up completely drenched in sweat, which is something that was just really, it's first of all, it's awful because you can't get just back to sleep easily. You obviously have to go and change and start. I mean, I'm talking about really
Yeah.
drenched with sweat, kind of completely soaking wet. So that was when I was like, okay, and also by that stage, so like at the similar time to when that started happening, my periods got like they weren't as strong and the same as they were before. They were longer, lighter. They would come and go whenever they felt like it. So you could tell that something was starting to change. Um, but the sweats at night was the thing that I thought, God, I'm gonna have to do something about this. I mean, I can't just ignore this. I can't ignore this because if I can't sleep, I can't really function properly. And obviously, I work a lot, so it's even if I wasn't working, it would be difficult. But let alone the fact that I was working a lot and so that I think for me was the worst thing. That was the hardest thing, and I found it really quite difficult. So weirdly enough, like I didn't really have many problems in the daytime. So I would feel warmish a little bit. I feel quite warm all the time anyway. But it was at night. It was the night times that were really bad. And then obviously the fact that your kind of period, like the light period, it continues forever, which I found also a little bit annoying because I wasn't used to it. It was things were changing. So I found that a little bit, but obviously not an issue, not as much of an issue, but this night sweats were an issue. That was the
Okay.
main thing I had.
And so when did you start experiencing these types of symptoms?
I think I must have been around 48 or 49,
Okay.
that sort of age.
Okay. And did you do anything about it? Did you go see a doctor, or did you, I don't know, other ways to handle the symptoms?
Well, so I do what I usually do is I start researching and try to learn about it myself. So I because you have to remember, I mean, this is a little while ago, and even now there's a lot of disinformation out there
Mm,
about HRT, about everything. And so I mean I heard from other people and from the press, from other sources, about how terrible HRT was and that you'd get cancer and die and all the rest of it, and just put
so
up with your
just
symptoms. And
for anyone who doesn't know what HRT is, it's hormonal replacement therapy. If you can just introduce it very briefly before we go into the
yes, so
research.
so
Yeah.
so so basically, what I because I'd obviously I'd heard about the study that
Mm,
but I'd heard about the study showing that hormone replacement therapy could increase your risk of certain cancers. So I'd heard about it, but it was obviously in the press, and the press, um, doesn't doesn't explain research in the correct way. So I'd heard about it, and I know, and I'd heard people talking also about it that their mums or whatever were stopped taking it or decided not to take it, or my mother never took any HRT. So I'd not had any direct experience with it. I just heard what people were saying and what I'd read in the press. So I decided to have a look for myself and to think about it, and to research it in detail, because I realized that actually I couldn't go on for years with these kind of sweats, or I don't know how long. I mean, because it's impossible to know how long they go on for, and they were very debilitating. So I think I now in retrospect realize I was fairly fortunate that I didn't seem to have too many other symptoms, even though it's quite difficult to know. I mean, it could be that my energy was lower. And I'll tell you the other symptom I did really remember, actually thinking about it, was my hair and my skin were so my skin was terribly dry. Like, it was like
mm,
sort of scaly almost, on my legs and stuff. And I noticed that my hair was changing. It was very thin. It was very dry. So there were those sort of physical things as well, and then, well, they're all physical things, but like outer sort of appearance things which I noticed, and then there were these night sweats, which was something that I only noticed
mm.
because they were happening to me at night. So just going back to the research, so I decided to try and work out for myself, or try and at least educate myself, about what was happening to me and why. Um, so I remember that well, I started looking online as one does, and but you know, I'm quite difficult in the way that I even research stuff online because there's a lot of rubbish out there. So I look for medical journals and I try to plow through them, and you know, articles and journal articles and stuff. So I read quite a few of these, but then I found a book which was written by I was in Belgium at the time, by a Belgian doctor who was a specialist in hormones and hormone therapy. And I'm trying to remember the name of this book, which I can't, but you know, but I can't remember the book. But I read that book, and it was very much talking about all kinds of things and what you can do, which wasn't the sort of chemical hormone replacement therapy that was the one that was out there on the market. Well, I say on the market, except you couldn't really access it because doctors wouldn't prescribe it, and the reason was because of this one dodgy a research study that was done many years before. But Capu, I'm sure you know a lot more about this. So I'm telling you, this is my experience.
No,
Okay, this
no,
is
but
how what
this is
happened with
about
me.
sharing experiences. No, 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 it's fascinating. So you read this book and then
So I read this book, and so that was sort of the beginning of when I started to have more of an idea about um, let's say about how doctors who were specialists in hormones and who weren't sort of anti-women, like, oh, just put up with it, women have always put up with it, nothing's really going wrong with you, and just get on with it.
Mm,
So you know, not talking about those people because there are a lot of them out there, and
yeah.
I'm talking about, you know, people who are interested in trying to help and solve the problem. But there were other things out there, and the things that I fell on. So I looked at all the herbal kind of remedies, you know, black ash, you know, things like
Mm,
this, which many people say help. I also realized that, you know, in some kind of parts of the world that women have, you know, far fewer symptoms, almost none, perhaps in Japan when they would have a traditional Japanese diet. So I looked into a lot of things that to do with diet, to do with supplements and things that weren't artificial, let's say chemical hormone replacement theory, hormone replacement therapy, and to see if there was something else that, you know, could help me. So I did try some of these things, but I felt that they didn't help me enough. So they might have helped a little bit around the edges, but not enough to really make a difference. And then what I did was I came across bioidentical HRT. And what the difference is, to my knowledge, is that it's they're made from sort of natural products. But it's not only that. It's not only the fact that these are made from natural products, from yams, I believe. But what I liked, the idea for me, what was the most important thing was that they could actually give you what you needed. So basically, if you go, first of all, they listen to you and they will start you on the therapy, which most doctors won't. And I'll tell you another story about that. So the people I went to is a place. So it's private. So unfortunately, you know,
mm,
I'm very privileged and fortunate enough to have been able to do that. And I know that, you know, a few people are, because it's a whole process, because basically what they do is in the beginning they take a blood test and they see where you're at, and then they start you on this therapy, but at a very low level. And the idea is to try and find the level that works for you without giving you, you know, too much, to find your level. Because look, I weigh like 52 kilos. I'm tiny, and you know, some sort of a one size fits all, even in any medication, doesn't do very well for me. I know that because I just react quite differently to medicine than someone else would. So I also read that, you know, the HRT is a one, you know, at that time anyway, definitely it was one dose, one size dose for everybody, and it's a high dose. And I realized, first of all, I didn't want to take it, and secondly, I just didn't think it would be right for me. So the advantage for me of using bioidentical therapy was that, you know, it was very much geared to treatment for me. And basically it's a process. So over those years, so what they do is they start you, and also it's all with creams, and you know, there was nothing taken internally like as a pill. So we started off with a very low dose, and then over time, so increased it a bit to actually find the right level. And I, based on my research, I also asked for some testosterone because I felt that I needed it for my energy and because I do a lot of sport. And you know, the doctor listens to me. This is the Marion Gluck Clinic in London, that I went to, but I'm sure that there are other clinics and places, you know, elsewhere.
okay. Wow, what a journey. It
Mm.
it's crazy to me to listen to all of this when I think that every single woman or person born woman will have to go through menopause. And this is the amount of research and effort that needs to go into finding a treatment that's suitable to you. Did you feel that way when you were researching? Like, did you how did you stay motivated? Did you feel like you could talk to people about it, or was there sort of a taboo? How was that?
So I just like to add here before I start on that question. So I have a sister who's 3 years older than me, and
Mm,
the doctors, and she's in London, and doctors refused to, over the period of I guess 8 to 10 years, refused to give her anything at all, and tried to give her antidepressants, drugs. Um, Even though she wasn't depressed, she was just had brain fog and she had no energy and she felt ill. So I said, I'm not a doctor, but I told her, look, I know what's happening to you, and you're just being fobbed off by these people because they just, they're not incentive. Sorry, I guess I'm being a bit negative, and I apologize to all the really amazing doctors who are out there who might listen to this, but it's very, very aggravating as a woman. I've had it all through my life, even with my children. When I go to doctors and they look at me as if I'm hysterical and I'm stupid and I don't know what I'm talking about. And so I never go to any doctor for anything without knowing at least as much as I possibly can myself, and being really clear about how I'm feeling or what's happening. Um, because I've had really bad experiences. Anyhow, in the end, another anecdote. My sister, after 8 years of this, of her being, they wanting to prescribe antidepressants, I said to her, look, you go to a different doctor and you tell that doctor that you can't sleep at night because you have hot flushes, you can't concentrate. I gave her all the symptoms that you said. I said, you reel them off one after the other. And then they will have no choice at that stage to give you HRT. Anyhow, which they eventually did. It helped her a lot, but the dosage was all wrong and she had all kinds of problems. But anyhow, so this was what I was expecting would be in store for me if I went down that route. And I've been, as I said, fortunate enough that there was another route possible for me. But it is very aggravating, the fact that that's the only option you have. And I know I've talked to people now who still have this issue that they're not being prescribed it, or if they are, it's not suitable for them. There's no other alternative.
mm.
So in terms of who to talk to, no, not really. But then perhaps that was my fault. Maybe I didn't seek out, besides my sister and my mother who told me she didn't take anything, and she suffered through that process that whole time, quite a lot. Um, but no, not really. So
So did your
just
mum tell
my
you
own
about
research.
her experience before?
Well, I asked her. I asked her because I was curious, because apparently I did read that, uh, it's sort of somehow the kind of the age more or less that your mum has,
Mhm.
it probably will happen to you. So I was curious to see what happened, what her experience was. um and
Yeah, it
basically it was
is.
the old way.
I can confirm that from all of my research
Mhm.
and writing on the topic. A lot of it is genetic in terms of the specific symptoms and the age that you get it at.
So basically my mum, when I asked her, told me that she also put on a lot of weight. My mum had always been like me all her life, was skinnier. It's like, skinny. And then at that age, around the age of 50, 52, I remember between that age and 58, she put on a lot of weight, which was very unusual for her. And her blood pressure, it was very bad for her health, very bad for her health. She was then put on drugs for high blood pressure, for high cholesterol, and all these kind of things. Even though my mum is pretty much vegan, so it was definitely not sort of a diet thing. Um, well, completely vegan actually. So I heard about what she had to say, and I put together, because I remember what happened at that time with her, how what happened to her health, and I realized that it wasn't something I was going to just let happen to me, because some doctor somewhere thinks that actually I'm a woman, so tough it out, and your life's over anyway because you can't produce children anymore. So I just wasn't going to let that happen to me. Sorry, my feminist thing coming out
No,
there.
no, it's very good. I love it. That's amazing. Good for you. That's really great. I have a stat here that I do want to read for people who might not know. Because actually a lot of women don't even go on to treat their menopause. And so a survey in 2021 by the State of Menopause Study showed that 73% of women reported that they were not treating their menopause, despite 90% of women experiencing symptoms. And this is a peripheral issue, and the UK government also published a whole study on this, and how it's hard for women, particularly women from minorities, to be diagnosed. So I can understand that from the get-go, you told yourself, I'm going to do this myself, even though we wish that that wasn't really necessary, I guess. Did you?
Capu, can I say something?
Yeah,
Sorry to
yeah,
interrupt.
of course, please do.
You said women to get diagnosed, but you know, I'm sorry, like women, if a woman goes into a doctor's surgery at the age of between 47 or 48 and 52 or 53, I mean, you don't need to be a rocket scientist. You can just be a doctor and realize what the issue is, right? Now, come on, honestly, let's be serious. So, you know, the fact that that stat scares me a lot, because I would say that a lot of those women, and I understand what you're saying, that perhaps there's a difference and some would not seek treatment at all. But a lot of those women would have tried to get treatment, like my sister, right? Who tried over the space of many years and just was simply fobbed off, right? And this is just, it's just unacceptable. Women between that age, if they come in with the symptoms which are even remotely related to that list of what you've talked about, because they might not know exactly what their system is, they might just feel like awful, you know, do you know what I mean? Depressed. I mean, it might, doesn't mean they're depressive, it means they're in perimenopause or heading towards menopause, right? So I just think it's appalling, absolutely shocking, that we are still in this, you know, in this stage now where we have to be diagnosed as being menopausal. I mean, it's like, for goodness sakes. Anyway, sorry, I'm done.
No, I agree. I think it is changing though, because there has been a raising of awareness, which is great, but there is still a really long way to go, as you said. I'm just looking at my questions. We answered some of them. When you were going through perimenopause, and once you had this treatment, did you feel much better? Like, could you see a significant difference once you were on this treatment? And did you start telling your friends about it? Was there sort of like a sharing of information?
So yes, so it takes a little. It took a little bit of time because, you know, as I said, this is the way that they do it. They start it very low, and then they keep testing your blood. So it's very kind of real and scientifically done. It's not like, oh, here you go, you know, and if you have any problem, come back, or, you know, do you know what I mean? It's a sort of a, we'll start like this, and then we'll see how you go. By the way, they also prescribe DHEA. Now, DHEA is available over the counter in the US, but you can't buy it over the counter here in the UK. And DHEA is very important, because it's the precursor for all the hormones, and it's very important to the body. It's one other thing that really massively slows down at the time of perimenopause. So, but it's something no one talks about in the UK. But so basically, they would prescribe a cream which has your you know, your estrogen, your estradiol, and your estriol, which are the two types of estrogen, progesterone, in the right quantities or in the right levels. Well, they just try it. And mine has testosterone as well, because I specifically asked for it. And then they'll give you a pill a day of a small amount of DHEA. And then they slowly monitor how you're doing every 3 to 6 months, until you feel better and your blood tests show that, you know, your levels are better. And then you can go in once a year or whatever it is for maintenance. Obviously, at the same time, you need to make sure all your tests, which you should be doing anyway as a woman, you know, your mammograms and your cervical smears are up to date. So very important to just to make sure that everything is fine at the same time. So these things go hand in hand. They won't keep prescribing even the bioidentical hormones unless you keep up with your tests. But yes, so I kind of lost the question exactly what I was talking about.
I actually have another question, so we can go back to it. And so when do you know when you've reached menopause and you might not need the HRT anymore, the bioidentical.
Well, yeah. Well, so the difference between standard HRT and bioidentical HRT is you can keep on taking the bioidentical HRT. You don't, normal HRT, they recommend you only take it for 5 years. And that's because ultimately there is still, so I think another thing that I've learned from the research that I've done is that, we're not very good in understanding that our bodies, let's talk about women here in particular, we need certain things for certain periods. So, I think to keep taking hormones when you're 75 or 80, this is perhaps not necessary, or I mean, I don't know. I haven't got there yet. I can't tell you, but all I know is that the way that I feel and the way that I function is very important to me. And if that means I can, if I would have to stop taking an HRT 5 years in, which would have been when I was like 53 or something, this is not optimum for me. I still, I still do a huge amount of physical activity. I do a huge amount of mental work as well because I do a lot of things. And for me to be sort of subpar because I've, got no zero hormones, because actually I'm not producing any. So if I stop an HRT when I'm in my early 50s, let's say I've taken it since perimenopause at 48 or 49, 54, I'm off it. And then that's, again, you're coming off a cliff, aren't you? Especially the high dosage that you were taking in HRT. And this was not something, again, I'm not, how could I say, I still take these, and I will continue taking them as long as I can, because I feel normal, like I felt when I was 30 or 40. So I don't see any reason, if medically, especially, I don't need to. I didn't see any reason to stop. Why would I? And then I think you asked about talking to my friends about it. So yeah, I do. I talk to everyone. So even much younger women who are like 40 or something, and whatever we're talking about it. And I just say this is the most important thing you can do for yourself. Remember, when it gets to the time when you start feeling things, or research it now, even I just give them information to look into it, think about it, and remember, because there's absolutely no reason why, if you are affected negatively, some people are affected less, some women, but if you are affected by it, there's no reason why you shouldn't help yourself and make sure you get what you need, because there's no reason to feel like hell once you turn 50. I mean, we are going to live, well, I don't know how long I'm going to live, but you're going to live till you're 100 or more. So why would you spend half of your life feeling like it just makes no sense. Why wouldn't you be at, I mean, I consider myself in my prime, really. Like I feel like I feel better than I felt when I was younger a lot of the time. I mean,
I have a specific question for that, because I attended quite a lot of talks about menopause, and a lot of women actually feel in their prime after menopause. And so, yeah, so my question was, did you feel a shift in yourself or how you felt about yourself going through perimenopause and menopause?
No, not really. I mean, I'm trying to think about the sense of what you're asking me in that question. No, I felt that it was something that was happening to me, and it's a completely normal thing that was happening to me. But I felt that there were ways that could make me feel like I felt before it started. So I felt no reason for me to suffer through it in silence or any other way. But I don't feel different. I'm just saying I'm in the prime. Why? Because actually, when you get older, I don't know if it's anything to do with perimenopause or menopause, whatever. But I don't really care what people think or say. I feel different as a person just because of sort of age, maturity. But what I mean is, it would be a shame to feel like that inside, but then have all this physical stuff that was happening, and then do you know what I'm saying? So I think it would be really sad if I couldn't sleep for 5 years or for whatever, or my hair fell out or something. It would be a bit sad, given that I've just got to the stage when I can be pretty much relaxed with myself.
For sure. And there are more and more stats on the productivity loss of menopause, because these companies are losing women that are at their prime in their confidence and their ability and in their work. And they're feeling terrible about themselves and start doubting themselves because they're getting hot flushes and don't know what it is. So Yeah, that makes total sense. Um, did do you think there are any silver linings to all of this experience?
Yeah, I mean, of course, this is all part of life as a woman, and I mean, each part of life has its good things and some and its negative
Mm,
things, but so yeah, I mean, look, I have to say that I have been very fortunate that I've been able to get what I've to have the help that I've needed, and it's worked for me. So I know that and sadly in this day and age still it's rare. So I don't think that that's a normal experience, but at least I can sit here and say that that experience is possible.
yeah,
It
and that
should
it
be
exists.
for everyone. Yes,
Yeah.
it should be available to everyone. Ideally, that's exactly what would happen. There would be menopause clinics, and women would be, invited to go there from a certain
Mm,
age. And if they needed to go there before, which some do, then they would go, and they would be monitored, and they would be looked after, and they would be properly not diagnosed, but properly treated. Like it's like this is a human right. With 50% of the population, it's going to happen to all of us. Okay, all 50% of us, and this should be considered like a human rights issue because I'll tell you something. If men went through this, this it would be the norm. Okay, it would be out there, and everyone would be asked to go, and it would all be fine, right? Because we can't lose men's productivity, but oh boy, can we? We can lose the women.
I fully agree. And yes, and I hope that it progresses to that stage and that it becomes available to all. Um, that is all of my questions. I'm just checking. At the end of every episode of Understand Your Cycle, we end with a question, which is, what is one thing you'd tell your younger self about periods and you wish you had known?
Um, so I don't know. I don't know if the second part of that, I wish I would have known, but more,
Mm.
I think I would tell myself that each stage of a life a woman's life is important and different, and something to be appreciated uh, and to think about positively. And I know that there are some women and girls who suffer terribly from periods and from some issues that they have that go alongside them. So again, I've been fortunate not to have that, which is, I know, debilitating and often underdiagnosed. But just sometimes we think, oh God, not period again, or oh, whatever. And now, or when you don't have periods anymore, think, oh, now yeah, I'm different now. I'm not as like I was before. But actually, each period and each phase of a woman's life is, it's just as good and just as important as all the others. So yeah, so just enjoy it all while it's happening.
That's beautiful. And that's such a nice way to end. Thank you so much, Rina, for joining us on Understand Your Cycle.
Thank
And
you.
see you soon.
Thank you, Kapu. Bye.